reasonable doubt exists and the defendant must be found not guilty. Will everyone please raise their right hand? Do each of you promise that the testimonies you shall give in this case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes. You may be seated.
Zach, push the buttons.
Is the prosecution ready?
Yes.
Is the defense ready?
Yes.
Prosecution, you may call your first witness. Are you going to do opening statements?
Yes.
Okay. Prosecution, let's begin with your opening statement.
Oh, jury, heads up. You have note-taking things in front of you. This will help you on your assignment. Wise, caring, strong, noble, and trustworthy. These are all the qualities you would look for in a king, but none of these qualities did Richard III have. Over Richard's lifetime, through his actions he proved that he was temperamental, malicious, and willing to do anything to gain the throne. Through well-thought-out murder plans to convenient executions, Richard became known for his ways of killing off his family members and closest friends. With the following witnesses, we'll find all the information necessary in proving that Richard III was in fact guilty and had all the power and motive needed to kill his two nephews in the Tower. Today, as part of the prosecution team, we have Chase Gravel, Dustin Vinsel, and Lakin Burnt, and myself, Paris Hicks. Our main purpose will be to defend the deaths of the two princes. The location of the offense is England during the year of 1483. Our suspect is Richard III, who is accused of murdering the two princes in order to gain the throne. We will bring Sir Thomas More, an established lawyer, philosopher, author, statesman, and noted Renaissance humanist, to the stand briefly to discuss with you the events leading up to Lord Hastings' death, along with Richard's relationship with James Tyrrell, who hearsay had a hand in killing the two princes. Following More, we will call upon Dominic Mancini, an Italian writer whose accounts are considered a major source for its time period, to discuss with you the charges and execution of Lord Hastings. The Great Chronicles of London, written by Robert Faban, along with John Bruce, a historian and antiquary, will explain in depth the executions of noblemen during Richard's reign. Next, we will hear from Polydore Virgil, an Italian humanist, scholar, historian, priest, and diplomat, to elaborate on the relationship Richard had with his people. The fact of this case is this: Richard was not a trustworthy man. You would not trust him if he was someone you had to deal with every day in life. If you had a ruler who was publicly executing every respectable nobleman that became a threat to him, would you feel comfortable around him? And then, when the two princes suddenly happened to be murdered under his care, who would you blame? There may be no proof that it was Richard who killed his nephews, but there is enough instances proving that he was fully capable and had the means and motive to do it.
Defense?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Your Honor, this is not a case of a bad king doing whatever he can to take the throne of England. And this, in fact, is not a case to see if Richard III was a monster like some would have you believe. But this, instead, is a case to observe King Richard III of England as he falls victim to a conspiracy framing him for the murders of his beloved nephews, the princes in the Tower. We will present compelling evidence showing that the charges presented against King Richard III are machinations of Henry Tudor and the traitorous Duke of Buckingham in an attempt to usurp the throne to establish a new dynasty in England. This is evident in several forms. Over the years, Richard's name and legacy has been cut off and trampled upon by the new lineage of Tudors in a successful attempt to form their predecessor as a villainous monster for the reasons that this new line of rulers are presented as the saviors and heroes of England. But this is not the case, for these saviors and heroes are just what they claimed their predecessor was: the monsters who rule with an iron fist. Henry Tudor, upon his ascent to the throne, even executed other claimants to the throne, such as Richard III's own son, John of Gloucester. Henry went on to marry the daughter of King Edward IV, Elizabeth, in order to reinforce his claim to the throne. Beginning with Tudor's reign, a long line of historians were commissioned by him to tell tall tales of the former king and speak of him in scorn and slander, forgetting about the peace that Richard had brought to the land, ending the war with Scotland, forgetting the assistance he gave to the family of his deceased brother, the king. The Tudors took Richard's short time as king and spun it into their fictitious Hollywood drama that seemed to have made Shakespeare famous. The biggest part of this case that none of us must forget is that there is no proof indicating Richard III as the murderer of the princes, his nephews, making him an usurper of the throne. There's only speculation and myth in the opinions of those who were entrusted by the Tudor dynasty to record the history that they wanted to be told. If I'm not mistaken, opinion is not fact, and only fact will prove Richard's guilt.
Prosecution, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to call up Dominic Mancini.
Dominic Mancini, please take the stand.
Dominic Mancini, you are a witness during the time of Richard III, and you were not hired by Tudor or York to record. So, in your source, you said that Richard was Lord Protector of Edward IV's children, correct?
That is correct.
So, wouldn't that mean if anything happened to the children, it would be his fault?
Objection, leading the witness.
Sustained. You can answer the question.
I suppose it would.
Or overruled. You can answer the question. You
Um,
suppose. Is that what you said then?
You also said that English citizens can speak Latin, and you can speak Latin, correct?
I can.
You went to England on a personal expedition. So would you have no reason to put your own personal opinion into your writing?
Yes, I was on a personal expedition. However, I was recording for Archbishop of Vienna, so Angelo Cato, an account of my travels while I was there.
No further questions.
Cross-examine. You want to direct the witness?
You said you were in England recording for the Archbishop of Vienna.
Yes,
In your recording, you would want to be as accurate as possible, correct?
yes.
In your recordings, is there any hard evidence, to the best of your knowledge, of Richard committing the crime in question?
Well, my evidence comes from the people of England. I never personally met Richard, so I cannot necessarily confirm nor deny that he was guilty. I can only tell you what I have heard from the people of England.
So, from that we can gather that your report back to the Archbishop was reporting on the rumors of England in the time of Richard's criminal activities.
I suppose so.
No further questions?
Does the prosecution want to redirect? You may step down. Prosecution, would you like to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call up Shakespeare.
Will William Shakespeare please take the stand?
in the play, Richard killed Clarence for offending King Richard III, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Also, in your writing, Richard married Anne after murdering her husband, correct? Would you say he was doing that for his own personal gain?
Indeed. Indeed he was. Richard was a maniacal man.
No further questions.
Your witness.
Please state your name and occupation.
I am William Shakespeare, and I am a playwright.
Are you a historian?
Some may say so.
Would you consider yourself to be a fictitious writer?
Define fictitious.
Not based in truth, full heart.
Not necessarily.
So
just-
you only write the truth.
I could not say that, no.
Okay. So it'd be fair then to say that parts of your play are exaggeration and speculation.
Of course, everyone deserves a good story.
Let's talk about your play, The Tragedy of Richard III.
Let's do so.
Who paid you to write the play?
Queen Elizabeth.
Isn't Queen Elizabeth a Tudor?
Indeed she is.
So you were hired by the Tudor family to write a play about the man they took power from.
Of course.
Why do you think Queen Elizabeth would pay you to write a play based on the man that her family took power from?
Strictly entertainment.
Did she ever ask you to fabricate any parts of your play?
No.
Did you
No.
fabricate any parts of your play?
Of course, everyone deserves thrill.
Okay. No further questions.
Do you have any more questions for this witness? You may step down. Next witness.
Prosecution calls up Vitellius.
Will Sir Vitellius please take the stand?
Why were you hired by tutors? Do you know?
No.
No. You said that Richard was declared traitor of the crown. Who declared him the traitor?
I don't know.
No further questions.
Do you have any proof to kill King Henry?
No, it's not.
So you're saying that? Okay, no further questions.
Any more questions for this witness? No, not at this time. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
Prosecution calls up Richard III.
Will Sir Richard III please take the stand?
Please state your credibility.
The letters of Richard III himself.
So these are Richard III's own handwriting.
Yes, and accounts of others close to Richard.
How is it then that the records are inconsistent with other historical records?
Don't know.
No further questions.
Is there any hard evidence seeming to indicate Richard III as the murderer of the princess in the tower?
No.
No. Would you consider yourself a primary source rather than a secondary source?
Yeah.
No further questions.
Are there any other questions for this witness from prosecution? Yes.
One more, Your Honor. Or two more. Did you accept the role as Lord Protector of the Princess?
Yes.
Would you say you were biased in writing this?
No.
No further questions.
Witness may step down. May I call your next witness?
John Rouse.
Will Sir John Rose please come to the stand?
As your source, you say that Richard executed Rivers, Gray, and Sir Thomas Lover Van.
Yes, but because they were conspiring to kill Richard III,
What were they conspiring against?
they're gonna kill him. They didn't like him.
They didn't like him.
That's usually what.
That's why they were gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't really kill someone you like.
Alright. Alright, yeah, that's all I got.
Excuse me, can you try that one more time? I cannot hear a word either you said, but it's hard to
Alright. Does your source say that Richard was gonna execute Rivers, Gray, and Sir Thomas Van?
Yes, but because they were going to kill him.
No further.
Redirect.
You said Lord Rivers was unjustly executed, correct? You didn't say he was unjustly executed.
No.
Okay, no further questions.
Prosecution's next witness.
Sir Thomas More.
Will Sir Thomas More please take the stand?
Okay. Did you say that anything about Richard executing his?
Yes. Hastings was executed for allegedly conspiring against Richard with Jane or Elizabeth Shore, which was Henry the Fifth's. No? I misspoke. I'm sorry. IV. That's 4. Henry the Fourth's mistresses. And yeah. And yeah.
What reasons did Richard have for executing Hastings?
The reasons Richard had for executing Hastings. Well, he was afraid that Henry the Fourth's mistress that was conspiring with Hastings to destroy him. You know, like take him out. And
consider yourself a historian?
Yes.
And how old were you at the events taking place during the War of the Roses?
I was like a baby.
Maybe. Okay. As a historian, did you work mostly in your career under the Tudor dynasty?
Unfortunately,
Is it true that your works on Richard III were left unfinished?
that is true.
And is it also true that your Richard works were heavily influenced by John Morton, an avid Lancastrian supporter? Is that correct?
Yes, and the people in his house that work there.
Is it also true that your works heavily influenced William Shakespeare in his fictitious play about Richard?
Yeah.
Alright.
I don't know if I'd call it fictitious, but yeah.
And lastly, is there any hard evidence indicating that Richard III murdered his nephews?
No.
No further questions.
Would the prosecution like to redirect?
Question: am I allowed to go up and ask questions in place of Lincoln? Can you state how reliable you are? Pretty reliable. What are your qualifications? Well, my qualifications are I am an English lawyer, a social philosopher, statesman, Renaissance humanist, literary scholar, and Chancellor of England. Okay, so if it states that Shakespeare's writings were heavily influenced by you, so as a qualified historian and scholar, would you say that Shakespeare was accurate in his writings? If he was basing it off of my work, then yes. It states that Hastings was quickly executed without reason. Is that true? Yes. He was executed, very soon after being accused. Do you know how close Hastings and Richard were before the execution?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained. Witness may step down. Next witness.
Great Chronicles of London.
Great Chronicles of London.
So, is there anything you know about James Tyrrell?
James Tyrrell was a friend of Richard. They were close.
It's rumored that he was the ones that killed the children at the time.
Rumors are not credible sources of information.
Do you know anything about Hastings' execution?
Lord Hastings' execution was during a meeting of lords. Someone outside of the chamber door yelled, "Treason." Immediately following, Lord Hastings was taken outside and beheaded on the green by the chapel, with no formal trial or confession.
You stated James Tyrrell likely murdered the princes, and is this correct?
Yes.
Do you have any way to link James Tyrrell to Richard?
Yes. He was appointed sheriff by Richard.
But you have no way of connecting Richard having Tyrrell kill the princes?
They're all rumors.
Okay. So you can only speculate on the matter?
It's all speculation, yes.
Any other questions for this witness?
Would you restate Hastings' trial and how fast he was executed and the
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled. Ask the question.
There was no trial. Lord Hastings was taken outside and beheaded with no confession.
That was it.
Jameson, step down. Next witness.
Virgil.
Polydor Virgil, please take the stand.
Okay. Do you know anything about the relationship between Richard and Hastings?
Yes, Richard and Hastings were friends at first, but then after he said that he was guilty of treason, he had him beheaded. And that was the last Hastings was seen, as stated earlier.
Do you know anything about how Richard was liked by the people?
Yeah, well, in the beginning when he was trying to come to power, he used his little skills and was liked by the people, but then once he started ruling, he showed his true colors and the people did not like him. Just like me.
Your witness.
Mr. Virgil? Can I call you Mr. Virgil?
Yes, that's Mr. to you.
Okay. Is there any hard evidence indicating that Richard III killed his nephews, the princes in power? Good question.
Is it true that you are known as the father of English history?
Yes, I'm proud of it. Thank you.
Would you say that that qualifies you as a credible source?
Definitely. And my accounts are very accurate and detailed.
Okay, no further questions.
Witness may step down. Does the prosecution have any more witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
The defense will now have an opportunity to present witnesses. Are you ready with your first witness?
Yes. We'd like to call the Paston letters.
Passed in letters, please take the stand.
What is your name and occupation?
I do not know the names because the sources that I wrote has various authors because it has been passed through the Pastor family's generations.
Is there any reason you would lie to the jury today?
Huh?
Is there any reason you would lie to the jury today?
There is no reason to lie.
Let's talk about James Tyrrell. What, if anything, can you tell us about James Tyrrell's employment before Richard III's coronation?
James Tyrrell was an English knight, trusted servant of King Richard III.
Did he have any workings with King Edward before King Richard was coronated?
I do not know.
Okay. No further questions.
Your witness. No questions for this witness? Witness may step down.
We'd like to call Sir Thomas More to the stand.
Sir Thomas More, please take the stand.
For the court, can you tell us your name and occupation?
My name is Sir Thomas More, and I'm an English lawyer, social philosopher, statesman, Renaissance humanist, literary scholar, and Chancellor of England.
So let's start with the arrival of the princes, known as the princes in the tower. Can you describe to me the scene of which Richard, Lord Protector of England, is receiving the princes into his protection?
He's receiving them into his protection. Well, he greets them with affection and a kiss.
And how did he treat them when they arrived?
With kindness in public.
Why, if you could take a guess, would Richard, a man plotting to kill his nephews and obtain the largest amount of power in the kingdom, go out of his way to show his victim such love and affection?
To fool everyone, to show that he wasn't guilty. He was a liar and manipulator.
Why, if you could take a guess, would Richard place the princes in the most fortified tower in all of London for their protection if he were just planning to murder them?
So that it doesn't have ties to him because he wasn't actually there near the tower when it was happening. He paid someone else to do it, and so he doesn't have as many ties. Can't be accused of it.
Can't be accused of it, but yet he placed them in the tower, so, correct?
Yes, he placed in the tower himself. Also, it's a good place to murder someone who's high up.
What, if anything, would make Richard ignorant enough to allow the whole nation to see him place his nephews into safety only for him to kill them?
Can you repeat that question?
Objection. The witness.
Restate the question,
I said,
please.
if any. What, if anything, would make Richard ignorant enough to allow the whole nation to see him place his nephews in safety only for him to kill them?
Calls for speculation, but answer the question.
So why would he put the princess in the tower? In front of the whole nation?
Right.
Well, probably to try and show that he's still trying to be like, he wanted to protect them because he was technically Lord Protector over them, and so he put them up in the tower.
Now let's discuss the matter of, was it rightful, hold on. Moving on to the prince's death. When Richard heard the news, how did he react to this?
Well, how did he react? Well, he could never quiet his mind and never thought himself secure. His eyes whirled when he went abroad, his body secretly armored, his hand ever on his dagger. He was constantly on edge, ready to strike back. He took ill rest at night, never dozed than slept, and had troubled, fearful dreams. And he was very restless overall.
Would you consider this the emotions of a man who felt that his life was in danger?
No, I consider these emotions of a guilty man.
Lastly, let's talk about Richard's physical appearance. Can you describe to me your view on Richard's physique?
Little of stature, ill-featured of limbs, crook-backed, his left shoulder much higher than his right, hard-favored of visage, and, well, people called him warlike.
We'd like to present to the court and the jury, and Your Honor, Exhibit A. Will you read the highlighted portion for me, Record?
Yes. Probably Richard III had no great bodily abnormality. He was slight of build, for which he tried to make up by vigorous exercises, especially fighting, and he had a raised right shoulder, but probably nothing else of interest or importance. The cause of this might possibly have been due to his early exercises or an Erb's palsy. Neither of these seem very likely, so that better hypotheses might be that he showed a normal though unusual raised shoulder, or that he had a minor degree of Sprengel's deformity.
Objection. Relevance.
Overruled. Can you get to the point of the question, please?
Well, I already asked the question.
And what's the relevance?
I would like to know if there is any, is it possible that you could have exaggerated, I mean, based on this new information, is it possible that you could have exaggerated in your description of Richard, in your accurate accounts of history?
One question, where'd you get that source?
I believe I'm the one asking the questions here. Oh, and by the way, this is British Medical Journal, dated 24th through 31st December 1977. This, I just want to let you guys know again, British Medical Journal.
Alright.
And no further questions, unless you have any questions for me.
No, I
All
think
right,
I'm
thank
good.
you.
Prosecution, would you like to redirect the witness?
So is it true that you used oral information, public records, Fabian's New Chronicles of England and France, and the Great Chronicles of London to influence your writings, or use those as a reference?
Yes, I used people who were there, such as, people who lived through their time, such as, pardon me, Bishop John Morton and people in his household. I used the oral stories of my father, and yes, I have access to public records.
So you made sure to use multiple reliable sources?
Yes.
Okay. Did you write under the tutor's authority?
Yeah.
Did the tutors imprison your father?
Absolutely. Did.
So,
They also killed me. Just one look.
I'm so sorry. In your writings, did Richard tell Dr. Shaw he should claim Edward as illegitimate?
Yes.
Okay. So, in your opinion, if Richard was the rightful heir to the throne, like other records say, what would the point be of Richard asking Dr. Shaw to do this?
Well, he wanted Dr. Shaw to tell people so that they would all see him as the rightful king, and that way he could get the throne.
In your writings, you mention Richard and Tyrell. Do you know the relationship between the two, or how close they were?
Well, before the death of the princes in the tower, Sir James was a trusted servant of his. After the murder, Richard gave him great thanks, and some say even made him a knight right there on the spot.
So, in your writings, Richard thanked Tyrrell for the murder of the two princes.
Yes.
Yes. So that means that Richard. Does that mean Tyrrell could have killed the two princes for Richard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it also true in your accounts that there were very specific details about the two princes in the tower, such as Richard asked Robert Brackenbury to kill the princes originally, but he refused?
Yes, he was the constable of the tower, and he refused to kill him.
Is it also true in your writings that Richard would act friendly with those who he hated?
Mm-hmm.
So he could have just been acting remorseful about the deaths of any friends or family?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions?
Any other questions for this witness?
Yes.
As we discussed earlier, your exaggeration about Richard's physical appearance, do you think that possibly was it to make him appear as if you were a villain?
Yes, it was to give him a more grisly outlook.
Okay. I mean, if you had greatly exaggerated Richard's physical appearance, I mean, what else did you exaggerate throughout your historical writings?
Not much else.
Not much else?
No.
All right.
No.
Okay. And since you wrote this, is it possible that you could have greatly exaggerated the aspects of Richard's alleged villainous nature?
No.
No?
I mean, There's a chance, but it's a very slight chance.
There's a chance. All right.
Small.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any other questions for this witness? Okay. Witness can step down.
We would like to call the Great Chronicles of London to the stand.
Great Chronicles of London, please take the stand.
Please state the reasons the court has to believe your account of these events.
The Great Chronicles of London are a legitimate and credible source throughout history. It's considered by historians a major and important source of information.
Let's talk about Richard's character. During the battle against Queen Margaret and her son Prince Edward, who, if anyone, led King Edward's vanguard?
The vanguard was led by Richard.
So in your opinion, did King Edward trust his brother Richard?
With his army.
To your knowledge, did Richard ever break his brother's trust while living?
He trusted him with his army, he did not.
After King Edward's death and Richard brought the princes into his protection, how did Richard treat Queen Elizabeth?
Kindly.
Did he ever threaten her or attempt to hurt her?
No, he applied no unnecessary force.
Okay. After Richard III was coronated King of England, how did he treat the people?
With respect, he gave them rewards as such.
How would you say the people felt about Richard?
Some would say they loved him.
Now let's talk about the supposed murders of the princes. What, if anything, can you tell me about the rumors involving Richard and the death of his nephews?
There was a variety of accounts. Some claimed they were murdered with a knife between two feather beds. Some say poison, while others say drowning in wine.
Was there ever anything more than rumors?
No.
In your writings, you speculated that James Tyrrell had killed the princes, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any evidence proving he was hired by Richard, or is this merely speculation?
It's all speculation.
So what you're saying is outside of speculation, there was no way to connect Richard to the deaths of Prince Edward and Prince Richard other than James Tyrrell.
Yes.
What, if any reason, did Richard have for killing his nephews?
None. Richard was already crowned king at the time, and they were declared bastards. There was no reason to kill them.
Shortly after a sermon led by Dr. Shaw delegitimizing the princes, the Duke of Buckingham gave a speech. Please tell us about this.
This speech was considered to be the greatest in remembrance. It was so good, it was considered to be the best ever.
What happened after the speech to Richard?
He was crowned.
Okay, so what you're saying is Richard already had control of the throne before the princes were killed.
That is accurate.
No further questions.
Redirect.
So in your records, there was a doctor mentioned that claimed Richard was worthy of the throne. Correct.
Correct. It was in the sight of lords and highborns that he declared this.
So, do you know who the doctor is and what would make him a credible source?
Dr. Ralph Shaw was a legitimate source of information.
Why is that?
He was appointed by the crown as a doctor.
At this time, though, it was believed to be a rumor that the two princes were illegitimate. So, is there a possibility that Richard had him announce they were illegitimate in his
Objection calls for speculation.
I can answer it.
She's asking the witness's opinion. You may answer the question.
In 1483, Parliament declared them bastards. It wasn't just Richard.
Okay. In your records, is it true? I'm sorry, one moment. In your records, is it true that they say Richard bought friends and loyalty using the former king's money?
Objection, relevance.
How would you like to connect the question.
Would he have bought his loyalty from all of his followers?
It is true that Richard did use the former king's treasury. However, I do not see the point in asking that all kings give favors.
In your records, did you say that Richard was regarded as a, quote, hog and wild beast, end quote?
I did.
Is that in regards to his physicality or his character?
His physicality, he was a monstrous man. Physically.
Just for confirmation, in your records, did you say that Richard struck Edward IV?
He did.
Do you know the reasoning behind the altercation?
I do not. At the time, it was due to an argument. I believe Richard was given a short, smart rebuttal of an answer, and he struck him with his gauntlet.
Tyrell is also mentioned in your records. Do you know the relationship between the two, or how close they were?
They were good friends. Richard made him the sheriff.
So it's rumored that James Tyrell killed the two princes. So is it possible that Tyrell was one of those people whose loyalty was bought?
They were friends before he was appointed sheriff.
Okay.
There were several of even some claim an old servant of Richard did the deed. It's not known who killed the princes.
No further questions.
Any other questions for this witness? You may step down.
We would like to cover roles of parents.
Rules of Parliament?
Rules of Parliament, please take the stand.
Please state your name and occupation.
Rules of Parliament. Just I take accounts. Question any bills from the government.
Okay. Why did you come here today to testify in this case?
And to clear the air about Richard and expose the truth.
Let's start with 1484. What, if anything, can you tell me about marriage between King Edward and Elizabeth?
Mainly that it was private and it was fake.
So you said that marriage was private and fake, and how can you say about Edward?
Edward he's a liar and an adulterer.
Since they have a fake marriage, did it affect to their children?
Yes. So.
What happened to George, Duke of Clarence, brother to King Edward?
I'm not sure.
No further questions.
Prosecution.
Is it true in your records that Richard was only considered to be the heir to the throne?
No, it's true. It's in the records that he was the heir to the throne.
Okay. So these roles include public and private records and bills
Yes.
and other such things.
Yes.
Do you know why those roles would be private?
Which roles are you talking
Just any of the private roles.
For government have to themselves. Mostly the questions and answers are for the government itself.
So then could anything related to Richard be one of those private records?
Yes.
No further questions.
Your witness.
We will redirect. So, according to your records, are the princes illegitimate?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so in your opinion, is there any reason Richard would kill his nephews when they've already been declared illegitimate and he is already the rightful heir?
No, he has no reason to kill them. He's the heir.
No further questions.
Any other questions for this witness? Mason. Call your next witness.
We'd like to call Crowland Chronicles.
Roland Chronicles, please take the stand.
When did you write the Crowland Chronicles?
Between the 14th and 15th century.
That would fall under Henry Tudor's reign, correct?
Yes.
Is it true that you knew Richard personally?
Yes, I was his chancellor during part of his reign.
All right. Let's talk about where Richard was when the alleged murders took place. Where, to the best of your knowledge, was Richard at the time of the alleged murder?
He was to the north, visiting his basically relatives in Wales.
So he wasn't in the vicinity of the tower at all?
No.
What was, you already answered what Richard was doing there. What information, if any information, do you have on how Richard supposedly committed the alleged murders?
I did not write anything in my records about how the murder was committed.
Is there anything in your records that would prove that the murders actually happened?
I wrote that the princes met a violent end, but I did not mention how or why.
Would you be able to provide me the information of where your information is coming from on the prince's ending?
Well, the prince's dying was common knowledge, but I didn't speculate any further on it.
In your opinion, would common knowledge be synonymous with common rumor?
Well, no, because the princes, they disappeared, no one ever found them, so they obviously died.
If the bodies were never found, does that mean that they were dead?
I mean, it's possible that maybe they disappeared somewhere, but
Let's
most likely they died.
move towards Richard's dealing with the council. What, if any knowledge, do you know about the council's involvement in Richard's actions or decisions?
The council placed Richard as the protector of Edward V. So,
What duties came with being the Lord Protector?
he basically had all the powers of the king until Edward V became old enough to take the throne for himself.
Was he also in charge of the prince's well-being?
Yes.
How strongly did Richard take his duties?
Well, he appeared to take them with great sincerity. He already showed loyalty to the king and his mother, so, yeah.
Let's talk about the princes for a second. Do you have any knowledge at all about the princes being brought to the tower?
Yes, Richard placed them in the tower for protection.
No further questions.
So, in your records, is it true on page 12 that Buckingham and Richard could do what they wanted once they removed the supporters from the previous king?
Yes, there wasn't really anyone to oppose them at that point, so they pretty much had free reign.
Is it also true that Richard claimed himself as king and that Edward's sons were bastards, as you said on page 13?
Yes.
Is it true in your records that Richard Ratcliffe, Anthony Earl Rivers, Richard Grey, and Thomas Vaughan were innocent people who died when Richard came into power, as you said on page 14?
I didn't speculate that they were innocent, but they were killed by Richard.
In your records, earlier on you said that the little Edward and Queen Anne died of illness.
Yes.
Well, is it also true that it was later found that Lady Anne was poisoned, as you said on page 18?
There was no concrete evidence to whether she was poisoned or not.
Okay. Is it also true that Richard ordered the death of Lord Strange, as you said on page 20?
Yes.
Do you know for what reason?
No.
Okay. No further questions.
Just one more question. In your research and writings, is there any hard evidence that Richard committed the murders?
No.
I'd like to call Fabian to the stand. Fabian's Chronicles.
Fabian's Chronicles, please take the stand.
What was your occupation?
I had many occupations, but my main occupation was an author.
You might have to talk a little louder. I don't know if they can hear you.
You guys can't hear me?
Talk to Jim.
I had many occupations, but my main occupation was an author.
In your writing, where did you get your information?
I got my information from I decided myself.
Beside yourself. All right. So you were alive when these actions took place?
I heard about that.
Let's move on. We can talk about Richard's reputation for a second. In your writing, you talked about the tales of Richard being common fame. What did you mean by writing them?
I meant that they were rumors.
So the information being spread about Richard. All right, no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Is it true that you were petitioned to write your chronicles by Henry VII? Yes, okay. Do you have any motives to be telling the truth in your records?
Keep my word with everything. Don't lie.
Okay. So, what sources did you use in your records? What? Okay. Did you use eyewitness accounts? Yes. So, would eyewitness accounts be counted as reliable, since eyewitness testimonies are often not reliable because the brain fills in information that is already lost?
Objection, calls for speculation.
After your death, a version of your story was published. Yes. And then 17 years later, it was published in your name. Okay. Do you know who published the first version?
I actually did.
That's okay. Do you know if the original publisher had any bias for or against Richard? Is it true in your accounts that you state Richard executed or ordered the execution of Henry VI, the two sons of Edward IV, the Duke of Buckingham, Collingbourne, and Sir Edward? No. Did they mention any of those people being executed?
But not from Richard.
Okay. Is it true that in your records, Duke of Buckingham and the two princes were secretly put to death? Yes. Did the Duke of Buckingham supposedly conspire against Richard or was a traitor? No, okay. Why would there be a reason for his death to be a secret, if you know any? Do you know why the two princes would be secretly put to death? Do you agree that Henry VI was killed as well? Openly, not private or in secret? Can you repeat that?
Secret.
Okay. Do you know why he was killed? Okay. Is it true in your records that Richard struck Sir Edward in a fit of anger? Is it true in your records that Richard struck Sir Edward in a fit of anger? No. Is it true in your records that Edward IV was killed and speculated that servants killed him? Yes. Do you know why? Do you know if it was ordered for them to kill him or if it was their own idea?
Objection, speculation.
Question refers to the witness's account of record from his writing, so the question can be answered.
Is it true in your records that Turberville was killed? You're sure? Well, so do you believe that if, oh wait, sorry, one moment. No further questions.
Redirect. No further questions, we'll see. Next witness.
Defense. Defense would like to call to the stand Richard III.
Richard III, please take the stand.
So is it true that some of the letters in your source are Richard's own words?
Yes.
Who else are the authors of some of the letters in your source?
Archibald Whitelaw has one, and there is, I don't know exactly what.
Is it true that it's King James III of Scotland?
Yes.
Okay. And that Archibald Whitelaw, is that the Archdeacon Archibald Whitelaw?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about Richard's character. Can you describe to me the kind of man Richard was in regards to religion?
He was a pretty strong Christian man. He had a book where he wrote down his prayers that he often prayed and talked to God.
Can you describe to me how Edward the King, his brother, felt about Richard's loyalty to his military
Well, whenever the King James Scots waged war, he appointed him as the Lieutenant General of the army, so he put him in charge of it pretty much.
How did Richard feel about his right-hand man, supporter, the Duke of Buckingham, turning against him?
He called him a malicious man and the most untrue creature alive.
Would you say he was very offended?
Yes,
by this trip?
he was offended.
Do you think, based on these testimonies by these various writers who were either knew Richard or from Richard himself, do you think that Richard may have been a godly man, a loyal king?
Yes.
Let's discuss Richard's acts as king. Is it true that he was so bothered by the strife that Elizabeth Woodville and her family had gone through, that he made a pledge to her to protect her in the best way possible?
Yes, that is true.
Can you describe to me Richard's relationship with the King of Scotland, James III?
He was, well, King James of Scotland said that he loved him and trusted him, and they made a truce and did not want to fight anymore.
I believe you said earlier that King James III had waged war against England originally.
Yes, that he had. And then they had a truce and stopped the fight.
And they made peace.
Yeah, they made peace.
Did Richard bring peace between England and Scotland through his peaceful agreements with King Richard III?
Yes.
Is it possible that Richard could have been a noble king?
Yes.
What purpose did he have to mend relationships with Woodville, if Elizabeth Woodville, if he were already king?
Because he's a good man.
Okay, no further questions.
Redirect. Oh, that was your witness. Yeah, do you guys want to redirect?
Did you have many enemies or people who were traitorous to you?
From my sources, the Duke of Buckingham betrayed me.
Do you know why that is?
I do not.
Based on your writings, it said that you went to constant wars for justice and you seemed content about it. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you believe you were the rightful heir to the throne?
I don't think my sources say anything about him saying that, but he did become king.
So you think that it would have been justice that you got the throne and had the two princes removed from the throne?
My sources don't say anything about the two princes.
Do you know if there's a reason for that?
I do not.
No further questions.
Redirect. No more questions? Witness will step down. Next witness.
We would like to call York Civic Records to the stand.
York Civic Records to the stand, please.
Alright. What are the York Civic Records?
We're a committee in York who holds all the records, documents.
Why were the records kept, or why were they written?
They were kept because York wanted to preserve the image of Richard, because York viewed him as a very, noble guy.
So as a committee a group of people, this would be an accurate source?
It's from the whole town.
The whole
pretty
town.
much.
All right.
Yeah, I'd say there's
It's
diversity.
It's sources from citizens.
This is directly from the people? All right. Let's talk about Richard's reputation. Among the general population, how did they view Richard?
He's a nobleman.
A nobleman. What was the reaction to his death among the city of York?
Many were saddened by his death.
They laminated it.
Why did they love Richard so much?
He was very generous. He gave a large amount of money to a poor city, a poor town, as they were in need yearly.
To the best of your knowledge, there wasn't any ulterior motive for Richard to be so generous?
No.
Purely out of the goodness of his heart. No further questions.
Hi. So is it true in your records that they barely said anything negative about
Yeah.
Richard? Is it also true that citizens were told to arrest anyone who said anything negative or slanderous about Richard?
That is true.
Do you think there's a correlation between the two? Why is that? Your records also don't include any mention of the two princes, correct?
That is correct.
Do you believe it was possibly intentional that they left out any mention of the two princes?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Your records state that Buckingham intended to cause destruction. Do you have any proof or any background to that?
No, not any more evidence.
It also states that Edward IV thanked Richard. Do you know why?
Yeah, he was very fond of Richard, praised him for a lot of things. Doesn't really know what,
No further questions.
Redirect. No more questions? Witness may sit down. Call your next witness.
Vitellius ASPR.
Vitalius, please take the stand.
Please state your name and your occupation.
Well, I am Vitellius, and technically I'm a piece of paper.
Okay. What experience do you have, if any, that would make you a good person to testify in this case?
One of the earliest accounts of the murders.
Why did you come here today to testify in this case?
To prove that Richard is an innocent man.
Let's start with February 1461. What, if anything, can you tell me about the feelings of people toward Richard after the death of nephew in the tower?
Well, of course they were mad at him because they thought that he killed them.
Okay. So what you're saying is their death put Richard at advantage.
What?
So what you're saying is their death put Richard in advantage.
Yeah.
What, if anything, can you tell me about Buckingham attempt to take power from Richard?
They tried to take him from the throne, his crown, and
So what you're saying is that Buckingham betrayed Richard and attempted to take the throne. No further questions.
Cross-examine.
It's believed that you were likely hired by the tutors.
Yeah.
Is there a confirmation that you were actually hired by them?
No, just speculation.
It's also rumored that. Sorry, let me rephrase. There are only rumors connecting Richard to the death of Prince Edward. Do you agree that is only rumors?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know where in your documents that it says that? Is it also true in your document that Richard was responsible for the deaths of the two princes, Buckingham, Lord Chamberlain, and others? No further questions.
Redirect. Witness may step down. Next witness.
Miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous sources, please take the stand.
Interesting
Very interesting.
Please tell me about your occupation.
I'm an author.
Let's start with historical notes of a London citizen. What, if anything, can you tell me about the death of Prince Tower?
It was Buckingham's idea to kill the prince, and not Richard's.
Can you tell me about the Duke of Buckingham's environments? So, next question is, what, if anything, can you tell me about the rumors surrounding Richard and niece Elizabeth? So, what was Richard's thought on the matter? Okay, no further questions.
So there are 3 sources in total, correct?
Yes.
Do you know who wrote the historical notes of a London citizen? Do you know who wrote the Plumpton correspondence? Do you know who wrote the Mercer's Company records? Is there little known information about the authors of records?
Yes.
So in the citizen records, it says that Buckingham killed the 2 princes. It also says that Richard ordered their deaths.
Objection. This testimony is based on hearsay.
Prosecution is asking him to refer to records. So as long as he's drawing information from records, he can answer the question.
Is it true that these sources often contradict each other or themselves even? In the Mercer's Company records, it states that Richard acted visibly upset over Anne's death.
Yes.
But he only did that in front of a large audience. Yes. It also states that Richard said he never thought about marrying his niece. But he ended up marrying her anyway, did he not? No further questions.
Redirect.
Is your statement on Richard ordering the deaths of his nephews based on fact or rumor? Those are the questions.
Any other questions for this witness?
No.
You may step in. Call your next witness.
Our next witness is Chancery Patent Rules.
Chancery Patton, please take the stand.
What is the name of your source? Yeah, what is the name of your source?
Chancery Patent Rules.
Right. And what purpose does it serve for this case?
Well, the purpose of this case is all letters that are sent within the crown. So the government officials in England sending open or closed letters to each other.
How long has your source been running as official record with the English government?
Since 1201.
Not today, let's talk about the King Edward's rewarding of Richard. Richard was sworn in for life as Sheriff of Cumberland, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And who granted him that position?
The king. King Edward, his brother.
Did the king commend Richard for his efforts of defending England from Scottish rebels?
Yes, after the Scottish Rebellion, Richard was promoted to lieutenant to fight off King James of Scotland.
Would you say that the king found favor in Richard for his efforts for England?
Yes, I do think that he found favor in his efforts.
Moving on to Richard's involvement and contribution to the English community. It said, how many colleges did Richard found?
He found 2 colleges in England.
Where were they at?
Barnard Castle and the College of Middleham.
What, if any, purpose did he have for doing such a thing?
Wait, sorry, repeat that?
What, if any, purpose did he have for doing such a thing as in founding colleges?
He had the purpose to do that because he cared about the English community and moral involvement.
Would you say, if anything, that Richard was not only loyal to his king's military, but also to his country's education and economy?
Yes, Richard was very loyal to and active in both of those.
No further questions.
Cross-examine. No questions? Witness may step down. Advance call next witness.
We'd like to call Dominic Mancini.
Dominic Mancini, please take the stand.
What was your name and occupation?
My name is Dominic Mancini. I'm a Latinist and a poet from Italy.
We've already established earlier that you were writing to the Archbishop, correct?
That's correct.
We also established that would give you little reason to lie in your account.
Yes.
Let's talk about what you knew of Richard at the time you spent in England. How did Richard feel about the Queen?
He believed that the Queen was jealous of him.
And you wrote about Richard being appointed Lord Protector?
Yes.
Could you give us some more information, if any, on the duties and responsibilities of the position?
Well, the responsibilities of the position, included being in charge of the princes in place of Edward IV after his death.
Do you know how Richard felt about being appointed?
Well, he sort of demanded to be in that position. However, it is speculated, I can't confirm or deny that it's true. That it may have been in Edward IV's will that he be in charge of the children. However, he may have also abused his power in that position.
So it is possible that Richard was so strong about wanting the position because of his brother Edward's will.
That is possible.
Is there, to the best of your knowledge, any evidence which proves that Richard killed the princes, or that the princes even were killed in the first place?
Can you repeat the question?
Is there, to the best of your knowledge, any evidence which proves that Richard killed the princes without reasonable doubt, of course, or that the princes were ever killed in the first place?
I don't believe I detail in my source. I mean, most of my info is based on speculation from the people, so I do believe that they were killed, but I cannot directly connect Richard to their death because I never had any direct contact with Richard.
All right, no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Who asked you to record the events?
The Archbishop of Vienna, Angelo Cato, asked me to record for him.
Is that why you went to England, or was there a different reason?
As far as I know, I was in England and he asked me to record my time there. I don't have any info.
Did the man who hired you, did he have any alliance with Richard or any bias against him or for him?
I'm not aware of his connection.
So what motives would you have to tell the truth in your records?
My motives for telling the truth would just be to have an accurate account for him to read.
You are in fact Italian born.
Yes.
And what languages are you fluent in?
I am fluent in Latin and Italian and very little bit of English.
And you needed to have a translator there.
It is not exactly clear if I had a translator while I was there, but I believe so.
Okay.
Because my account was written in Latin.
And English people at the time spoke Latin as well, so you could understand some events.
Yes, that's
yes. Okay. No further questions.
Redirect. No more questions. You can step down. Does the defense have any more witnesses?
The defense rests.
Defense rests. Does prosecution have any more witnesses they'd like to call? At this time, both the prosecution and the defense have now rested their cases. They will now present their final arguments. Please remember what they share is not evidence, rather, do listen closely to understand their intent for you to understand their case. Prosecution, you may begin.
Thank you, jury, for listening to our points and taking into account the things we had stated previously. And thank you, judge, for the time you have spent with us today hearing us out. Richard was not an innocent man. If he were to be acquitted of all charges involving the prince's death, he would still be responsible for several other executions. Richard somehow managed to be king of England, even though he had brothers and nephews standing in the way of his throne being rightfully his. Though it is questioned if Richard had a hand in killing the two nephews in the tower, the children were under his protection and therefore his responsibility. There are also many credible sources stating that Richard discussed doing away with the brothers to multiple people. With Sir Thomas More, we have proved that he was a reliable source throughout history. If the defense would like to claim that Richard was in fact innocent and that there is not a possibility that he could have murdered the princes, then they would also have to disclaim that he did not unjustly kill anyone else, which cannot be proven because Lord Hastings' death, along with many other noblemen, are proof of his capability in planning a murder as a convenient execution. Richard was declared by Edward, his brother, Lord Protector of the two princes. In the English dictionary, the word protector extends off the word protect, which means to defend or guard against attack, to cover and shield from danger. Richard accepted this role and therefore took on the responsibility of protecting the princes. The question of who physically ended the prince's life in the end doesn't matter, for it cannot be accurately proven. What can be proven, though, is that Richard was responsible in keeping them safe, and yet he failed to do so. Therefore, the guilt is on him. He failed to do right by the princes. He failed to protect and defend them against attack, and as protector, he is the one who, in the end, must be held accountable for their deaths.
As stated in our opening statements, we, the defense, believe that Richard III is in fact innocent of the charges brought against him, which I will remind you is murdering the princes, not their protection, and is a victim of slander and conspiracy, an attempt by the usurper Henry VII to secure his own claim to the throne and tarnish the name of his predecessor. The prosecution states that Richard was guilty of committing the alleged murders of the princes in the tower. However, there isn't enough sufficient evidence to actually convict Richard, I believe, because it is all based on speculation, and there's no hard evidence proving that Richard had any hand in the murder, if there was a murder. There is no hard evidence against Richard. A significant bias has been proven. If you'll remember Thomas More in our Exhibit A, there was bias there. Some of those who speak against him were biased, and frankly, it would be a perversion of justice to convict a man of a crime when the only evidence that the crime actually happened is speculation and rumor. This is why I ask the jury for the rightful and just verdict of not guilty.
Permission to approach the bench?
Permission granted. Members of the jury, you have heard all the testimony concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine the facts. You and you alone are the judges of the facts. Once you decide what the facts are and the evidence that sustains it, you must then apply the law as given to you. The facts as you find them. All rise, and I'm going to lead.
Alright, Mitchell, could you shut that door, please? Alright, you may be seated.
Good. She never used the gas because I should have made a rocket.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I first of all want to say congratulations. You guys did fantastic. Jury, your take-home final is such. We need a verdict to this case. We need it Thursday.
Wait, how do
Wait, we won't select them. No, you'll live without knowing. They need time. They need time to debate amongst themselves, and they need time to write their position papers.
Your position papers are due on Thursday.
Class on Thursday.
Okay, 500. Okay, the rest of you. You have a reflection paper, if you're not on the legal team, coming up. Somewhere between 300 and 500 words reflecting on this experience and what you have learned. Any further questions? Yes, Sammy.
So we don't reflect on the verdict and whether we agree or not.
Yes, we're going to take that part out because it occurred to me you obviously can't have a verdict until they have had a chance to debrief and they don't have time to discuss what you have.
Do we need to turn in any of our research?
If you would turn in your paperwork to prove that you have, done some research, that would be enough for me. Okay, give yourselves a big round of applause. We have cookies, and then we can.
Can we go have long lunch?
Okay. That is a good question, Sammy. What we will do is we're going to move some furniture around. We will have cookies. We're going to get my classroom back in order. And I have zero objections to you guys hanging out here instead of going to chapel. Yes, some of you would probably like to change clothes.
Hey,
Here's a question for the jury.
Yep.
Do we need to all agree, or is it individual?
Okay.
What do we do
Put
about
names in the men. Yes.
When it gets a little closer to lunchtime, if we were going to be going off campus, could we check out and head out?
Wait, where do I turn it in?
Back into the basket. If you're checking out from the office, yes.
Okay.
Did you draw one of me, parents?
No, you weren't funny enough.
That's all I have.
Miss Neeson, you want us to turn this in?
Yeah,
We highlight it.
Life got better. Well,
No, she doesn't work.
yeah, you're mad. I picked them up this morning
It's actually a certain. It's actually certain where
Got it.
Bam, Jason.
Justin, you
can't take 4 cookies.
Hey man.
Justin, okay, stop
Hey
touching my
man,
backpack.
this good. People say you can take it. This helps the rest of you.
If you're going to travel, please exit into quiet.
Thank you, Miss Lisa.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, excuse me. We still need to get the classroom put back together. That was part of your responsibility here.
Can I go yell at everyone that just left?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, yeah, I guess it clears in his bed.
Okay.
So what's your Just take them all.
Did you want these?
Yeah, these look amazing. They're soft.
How do you want the desk?
Those are
Back
soft.
to how they usually are.
Like in the little
I need the pods.
These are the softest cookies I ever had.
Everything that you and I have written. Yeah, everything that you and I have written. I have.
Are you probably going to listen?
Yes. Yep.
It may be in here.
If it wasn't that
Huh?
I definitely have to say
You did fine. You're fine.
I didn't know it was in
Does it go back?
You're not gonna say good job.
It's really annoying.
Why would No, that was just Abigail first. I went in knowing that Abigail was like that was the biggest winner. So I had to go in. I don't have your.
Okay, hold on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just standing around, please make sure that you're helping move these desks back into groups. Junior's nicely set up for you. They do not need to, kick down.
So basically, they're not yeah.
Work because of and he was gonna make himself heavy searching. So I was like, no.
I don't know where you're
Yeah, that's not source name. And then he was like, yeah. But I never compromise on my own morality or I know the true allegiance to authority is not blind acceptance of everything that authority wants. I don't know, should be.
Oh,
That's good. That's a really good quote.
I know, I'm a little sad.
And
No, please don't.
I knew a lot about like
Just go.
No.
That plug was there.
I knew my father. Also, my last words were,
I have all
I
my
died
stuff, so I'm
being a
not
servant, good servant,
Let's go
but God's
over there.
first.
Anyway, my wallet's there.
Are there 4 desks
Literally.
or 5?
Are you gonna get a bowl? Or are you gonna get?
Thanks.
I'm gonna get Abigail's one more thing on Friday.
Are these
What does that not look like? But Cameron seemed to be relishing one in the bathroom. What? I said I don't know if they're good, but Cameron seemed to be relishing his in the bathroom. So I don't trust this. He asked if those cookies were all right. I said I didn't know. Cameron was enjoying his in the bathroom. It was pretty weird. I called him out on it.
How did I do
Also, where
You were great.
I didn't even use the cards.
Yeah, no, you were very
about the
natural.
Princess in the Tower, I'm like, I have heard by such people
How did you get to this house?
Edward thinks it were
Just
harmed,
thought
but
about what I
it's
do.
true. And I learned from them
Thought
that
your
much
stories
knew
were
what little
good.
cost had
Yeah.
to lie.
Is that like,
So like, I
is that straight from your source, or did you
might not
sort
want
of
to name properly.
adapt it to modern speak?
Yeah, modern speak.
What their name was.
I didn't really use the thous. Whatnot, but
The best.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
well,
So that's what I do. Yeah, see? Pretty wise guy. That's what I'm saying.
They didn't touch all
That's
the way.
true. All hail.
Just kind of a gap.
Well done, Abigail.
Is that good enough, Miss Lisa? When are we gonna know our grades? Is it after we do our papers? Is that a part of it, or are they all separate?
Am I leaving or am I
It's gonna be a part of it.
Are you keeping your pink straw?
Huh? How long were you waiting to do that?
Like however
A lot of stuff, I'm sure. Okay.
Blank page, blank page, blank.
I have a question.
Is that what Schoolboy Q is actually talking about though? When he says blank page? No, I think about it. He's wearing a mask right now.
Do what you have, and I'll take it.
I have like a whole cup full. There's not even a straw.
They look
These are the sources that we said.
There you go. Turn it in right over there.
We need to like connect them all together. So I'm not sure if everything has names.
I don't know. We lost my resources.
Yeah,
page.
but I have a picture of it.
Yeah.
So they posted it, so to kind of send that to you in an email or something?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Just gonna wear that all the time.
It's not a huge factor.
Paperclip or something, so we have that stuff.
I would have known where that was, 3 hours ago, but right at the moment,
We'll just put it sideways so you know they're all ours.
yeah.
Dress the job we want.
Maybe someday.
Someday.
this was Ethan's.
I think it's the tie clip It's making me question this, but if you had just a big white cowboy hat, you could be like a rancher or something. Or like the CEO of some ranching business.
All the money.
By the way, Mr. Z, did you hear the good news?
Which good news.
CJ's staying with us.
Survivor convinced me to stay.
Full time?
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
You're not losing me after all.
Very good.
Alright, if you wind up in chapel, enter quietly, otherwise avoid that at all costs.
Alright. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for the cookie.
You're welcome.
Never again.
Next year. That wasn't so bad though.
No, I thought they did well.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah. My feet are killing me. I
Why
might
is that?
never wear these shoes again. I mean, I love them, but it's been a little too much running around.
We've got a few hours till it.
Cookie?
Oh, I had one. Thank you.
Well, somewhere in the car, I brought my other pair, so I'm going to find them to do swap out. Okay. We need to do the thing.
The grading thing? That's not happening now, is it?
We have 10 minutes until lunch. Might be easier to do it while it's still fresh in our heads. Unless you want to do it after school today.
That's what I was wondering.
Okay.
So that way we'd have. Hopefully that would be enough time to go through it.
Okay.
I don't, I don't have a lot of notes on the prosecution or the defense, but most of the witnesses.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
A breather right now might be nice. Yes.
Ooh, sweet. How come she gets it to me?
You look Mr. Z.
Right.
If I were you, I think that'd be good enough. Mr. Z is like the best.
Who are you assisting?
Mrs. Banducci.
I know she needs it. I know she needs it. But there are some things that a TA does that Mr. Z does not do.
Like he just defies saying like I don't want to do it or like he can't do it.
No,
It's true.
it's
Unlike many TAs, I have a will of my own.
Yes.
that, and also I feel, there are some things that I feel are beneath you. You're a college-educated person. I would never ask you to do half a dozen things that would be on my TA list, like filing.
I like looking on the schedule and seeing like your whole day is just like assistant with like 5 different teachers. So that's pretty funny. Thank you, Miss Leeson.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brody, for the work you do. Oh, Mamma Mia. We're taking the next couple of days off, right? that trip to Tahiti I was talking about?
Finally booked up.
Yeah, it's only. Oh, Lord, we did a lot better than the next week. Thought we were.
I was very surprised.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, wasn't it?
He's very engaging.
Yeah.
Natural.
Those are my notes. Okay. I will help you clean this in a while. I'm going to take my shoes off. No, I'm going to the car and getting my shoes. And then taking them off. Yeah. You'd think 3 or 4 has been in my classroom long enough to know that that's not how we. I'll get study help to fix it. if people wander by, see if we can get rid of the last 2 cookies. I don't want them here during study hall.
I could take them to the copyright.
That works too.
Sure, so good.
You mean you do not want to bestow favor on random people that come to visit us?
Well, if you'd like to do that, I can keep them.
I'm mostly, oh my